What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back again today to have a quick little comparison and to help answer a few questions that I've seen posted a lot lately. What we're going to be talking about today is monitoring. Now, monitoring your diesel engine and pretty much engines in general is really important to do. Now, the majority of vehicles come with, just a basic set of gauges, your tachometer, speedometer, coolant temperature, fuel level, oil pressure, and trans temperature. And that's, even kind of pushing it, some of the more basic vehicles just have like a gas gauge temperature and even just a speedometer. But on our diesel engines and diesel powered vehicles, it's important to have as much data as we can, especially if we start modifying them. So there's two ways that people will usually gather data. You can either use gauges or a monitor, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the difference. All right, now we're in my test mule excursion, the one you guys have seen in dang near all the 7.3 videos, and I have two different setups here. Now I have this pillar with 3 standard gauges on it. I have transmission temperature, I have pyrometer, and I have boost. Now, adding gauges has been done, since way back, and this is pretty much the old school way of doing it. Now, the nice thing about the gauges is they are completely standalone from the PCM. The boost gauge right here plugs into the charge air pipe where it goes in, where the pressurized air goes into the cylinder heads. The pyrometer screws into a hole that I drilled and tapped in the driver's side exhaust manifold, and the trans temp gauge plugs into a port on the side of the transmission. Now, like I said, these are completely standalone of the engine computer, so you could pull the engine computer out of the truck and these things will still read. Now, they're nice. They're simpler. They're simpler. They're not as complex as this. There's no adjustability. Pretty much you hook them up and they read, and they come in all sorts of different colors, pressure ranges. If you want, different sweeps or whatnot, you can get them, different colored needles. But this is pretty much the old school way of doing it. Now there's different brands. These are Autometer, so these are not cheap. You can get Autometer, ISPRO, and a couple of the other manufacturers are the higher end, and then there's some cheaper entry-level ones, but they don't tend to last as long. So you can get in entry-level, a set of these for maybe around $250 with the pillar, or you can go even more and get the nicer Autometer ones. So these are the standard gauges, and you see, as you mess with the gas pedal or the fuel pedal, the pyrometer will move a little bit. Trans temp is pretty much stationary, but yeah, so these are the old school gauges. Now, this is one of the more fancy monitors. This is an Edge CTS2, and I have one in this truck, and I have one in the other one, and I like these things. I've run them in conjunction with one another, but they kind of do. This is going to provide you significantly more information and functionality. Now, in a 7.3 especially, two of the most useful diagnostic tools for crank no starts or oil issues is your IPR and your ICP. And as you can see here, the Edge will tell you what those are in real time, so you can accelerate a little bit and all your data will change. And this is just how I have it set up. You can change the background, you can upload a custom picture. I could put 3 gauges here. I can change the gauge layout if I'd like, and it's pretty much whatever you want to do. I have the screen layout for that, and you can set it to 4. You can set it to pretty much whatever you want, and then you can assign the different PIDs in what order you want. And a PID is basically a data point, so you can tell it what you want to see. So if you want to see, oil pressure, high pressure oil, your ICP and your IPR and everything, you can put it wherever you want. Now, the nice thing about these is they are expandable. So basically there's a little, see, right now it's just a triple gauge layout, and it responds as you accelerate and whatnot. So you can put whatever you want here. So if I wanted to get rid of ICP and put something else here, like say battery voltage, I can select new PID, or let's go with intake air temp. Put it there, exit menu, and I mean, you can change the gauge color, and now look, I have intake air temperature. And each one of these PIDs you can go into and you can set alerts for it. So say you you're worried about your high pressure oil system, you can go in and you can set alerts. So if your IPR goes above 80%, it can alert you, or if your EGT goes above 1300, it can alert you. So every one of these little PID boxes in here is changeable. Now, so this thing is completely expandable. There's a little port back here, and you get what's called an EAS module, which will plug into it. So stock, these do not come with the ability to read EGT, but neither did your 6.0 or 7.3 vehicle. So what it is you have an EGT probe that you thread into the manifold, and it has a little expansion module, and the expansion module plugs into here, but you can stack them. You can buy a universal pressure one, you could buy a universal temperature one, so you could monitor your fuel pressure, you could monitor, in the 6.0s, we know they have head gasket issues, you can monitor your coolant system pressure, and you just go in and you tell it what you want it to do. So when you plug the little module in, you'd click here and you would tell it to use the EAS system, and you can assign whatever you want. So I mean, this thing's like completely, it's completely expandable. And the other nice thing is it will act as a scan tool. So if you think if you're driving along and you're having issues with the truck, you can use it to pull codes. And on here, I mean, wastegate performance, because it's got the eBPV delete, and the 603, the keep alive memory issue, that's pretty standard. But yeah, I mean, you can do data logging, you can use it to watch mileage, you can do performance tests where it has a little accelerometer built in there, so it can, measure your acceleration, G-rate, all that kind of stuff. So, and this is a CTS2, so the newer one, the CTS3, is even more advanced, but this thing's invaluable. I mean, it more or less takes the place of these, and it takes the place of a scan tool. And I mean, I really like them. Now, if you were to compare them, you get an odometer gauge set and a pillar. Odometer gauges, like I was saying, aren't cheap. I mean, you're upwards of, around $400, 400 to 420. And I mean, these are, usually about 440, unless they have a sale or whatnot. But, I mean, it's up to you 100%. I mean, some guys like running these, and you can get them in different configurations. You can get them in 1, 2, 3, 4. Personally, I like having these because, I mean, it's good to have these, but any builds that I do for my customers, the majority of them end up going with an Edge or something similar. I mean, I've tried the SCT one, it works okay too, but I've just had a lot more success with the Edge, and it seems to be like less problematic and laggy and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I know there's been a lot of people, saying, hey, what are the differences? And so I figured I'd make a video about it because, typing it out, is a long and arduous process. And if, somebody asks me a question, I can point them to the video. Maybe it'll help answer all their questions. But the gauges, like I said, are standalone. The Edge plugs into your OBD2 port. Now, if you're running certain tuners, that could be problematic because some tuners need to be plugged in all the time. But a lot of them don't. For instance, like a Hydra tuner uses a what's called the J3 port on your PCM, which is a completely unused port. So it leaves your OBD2 port open for something like the Edge. So that's why, a Hydra tuner and an Edge are a really, really good combination, because, a Hydra tuner seems to be the best for the 7.3, but it's just, little digital display with 2 selector buttons. And the Edge, is the best way to monitor it, in my opinion, from what I've seen in my experience. So, you stack like a Hydra tuner and an Edge. I mean, that's kind of the best of both worlds, for tuning and monitoring. But yeah, I mean, this thing even has the capability to do a backup camera. It'll know when you put it in reverse, and you'll have a little backup camera here. So I mean, they're completely expandable, they're customizable, they're really freaking cool. And I mean, I use these things all the time to watch my stuff, when I'm towing or loading a really hot tune, because no matter what you do, gauges or a device like an Edge, as soon as you start tuning and playing with these trucks, you need to have a monitoring system, whether it's the gauges or this, because you need to know what the engine's doing, because stock, unless, you know, you blew a turbo boot or something, or you're having some serious issues. There's really no way to run, you know, your exhaust gas temperatures too hot. But once you start tuning and doing all that kind of stuff, you have the propensity to really hurt the engine if you're not watching it and doing it properly. Now, I mean, most of the you know, can tunes that you get are pretty safe, but if you threw like a way big set of injectors in here and, you know, didn't tune it right, or didn't have an intake exhaust, and you weren't watching your you know, weren't watching your temperatures, you could have serious issues. So some sort of monitoring system is invaluable. You know, I you know, people joke, you know, people kind of chuckle about it, but I call it pre-formance. You want to do these things pre-performance. Like if you're gonna do any heavy performance modifications, or even you're just gonna tow with your truck and just kind of want to keep an eye on it and see what it's doing, you want to have a monitoring system, whether it be gauges or an electronic one. You want to have something, because, you know, as the Super Duties progressed and got more complex, they would have, you know, the engine was able to see more data, but, you know, 7.3 and 6.0 didn't come with an EGT probe, so that's why you have to add it. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over the differences, because I know it's a pretty popular question, and just kind of show you guys two different ways of doing it, you know, the old school and the new school way of doing it. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in the gauges or the Edge and you want some more information, you know, give me a shout. I sell and install a lot of these things. Anytime one of my customers comes in, you know, wants bigger injectors, or, you know, start doing performance to stuff, you know, we'll usually have the you know, monitoring conversation. If they don't have one already, they usually will you know, want me to get them set up with something. Anyway, guys, thanks for your time, and take care, and I'll see you on the next one.